Good evening. After the closure of the illegal radio station Radio Nova by the Department of Post and Telegraph...
But now, time to join Colin Murray for the main evening news.
Good evening. The headlines. Clerical staff at the central bank who have been on strike for 3 weeks over a cost of living pay claim have accepted a Labour court recommendation.
Now the main evening news with Emer O'Kelly.
The IRA is planning a new murder offensive, according to the RUC Chief Constable. Good news for motorists as the dollar continues its steady decline. And Dublin's fair city is on countdown for the 1000th birthday. Good evening. The RUC Chief Constable, Sir John...
Now the 1 o'clock news with Eamon Lawler.
Soviet conservatives support Communist Party reform, but Mr. Gorbachev comes in for bitter personal criticism. The foreign ministers of America and France discuss Eastern Europe at Shannon. Some crew members of the Tribulus are brought to land as the damaged vessel makes for Bantry. Good afternoon. In Moscow, leading Communist Party conservatives, including Mr. Igor Ligachev...
Because of our special drama presentation, The Treaty, tonight's main evening news comes to you at the later time of 10 o'clock. It's read now by Brian Dobson.
Green Corps inspector says former Chief Executive Chris Comerford was in breach of his duty. New legislation is promised after the Supreme Court rules on ownership of the family home. And B&I sold to Irish Ferries for £8.5 million. Good evening. The inspector appointed by the government to investigate the Green Corps affair...
Progressive Democrat ministers are expected shortly to give their resignations to the Taoiseach. The government faces defeat on a motion of confidence in the Dáil tomorrow. And President-elect Clinton prepares for power. Good evening. Over the next hour, as the PD's time in government draws to an end, we'll be keeping you up to date with developments in Kildare Street.
But now on 1, it's time for the main evening news at 9 o'clock.
Hints of Fianna Fáil Labour talks as poll shows backing for former coalition partners. Bosnian government army in Behatch ignores 7 o'clock surrender deadline. Irish ferries to take French government to court over refusal to allow new service. Good evening. There are strong indications tonight that negotiations between Fianna Fáil and Labour on the formation of a new government... Big freeze set to continue as Met Service forecasts slow thaw. One man and his dog safe and sound after a night at sea. And when the going gets tough, the tough play football. Good evening. The Arctic conditions look set to continue as temperatures fall again tonight.
Prime Minister to attend tomorrow's Stormont talks, including historic meeting with Sinn Féin leader. The multi-million-pound live cattle export trade resumes after government intervention. And a controversial win for Monaghan in a marathon final at Croke Park. Good evening. The British Prime Minister Tony Blair will be in the north tomorrow.
A woman dies and 8 other people are hospitalised after a building collapses in Cork. National debt rises this year, but experts say it's not a cause for concern. And negotiations on the Indian Airlines hijacking reach a delicate stage. Good evening. A 21-year-old woman has died from injuries she received when part of a building collapsed in Cork city centre this evening.
Charles Haughey critical but stable after being rushed to a Dublin hospital early today. Mary Robinson announces she won't seek another term as UN Commissioner for Human Rights. And in Brussels, the Minister says he'll press ahead with sheep tagging with or without the help of farmers. Good evening and welcome. The former Taoiseach Charles Haughey is still critically ill in a Dublin hospital where he's being treated for a life-threatening heart condition.
Now for the main evening news with Eileen Dunn.
Good evening and welcome. The main news tonight. In the first row of the election campaign, Fianna Fáil accuses Fine Gael of producing a dishonest manifesto, but that party hits back with talk of funny money. Out on the hustings, it's vote management that has been occupying the party leaders' minds today. Elsewhere, fishermen opposed to cuts in salmon quotas take their protest to the streets of Galway. And another great day for Munster Rugby as they beat Cast to qualify for the final of the Heineken Cup. There have been angry exchanges between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael on the economy. Angry scenes in Naas as John Egan appears in court. He's charged with the murder of Francis Ralph in a taxi queue in Naas early yesterday. Minister says Ireland will meet its international obligations in relation to the Columbia 3. At a synagogue in Cologne, the Pope warns against a resurgence of anti-Semitism. A complete one-off, we were lucky to know her. Tony Blair leads the tributes to Mo Mowlam. Good evening and welcome.
It's the 6-1 News with Sharon Niviolon and Anthony Murnane.
Dutch police seize hundreds of guns and drugs from criminals connected to Irish gangs.
I'm committed, while I'm Commissioner, to ensure that this fight against criminality goes on. We've had too many deaths on our streets.
Palin Power, the Alaskan governor's attack on Barack Obama, delights Republicans.
This is a man who has authored 2 memoirs, but not a single major law.
Social partners are warned to lower their expectations ahead of tomorrow's resumed pay talks.
And together again, an Irishman presumed dead 5 years ago is reunited with his family.
He straight away, that was my dog. And he straight away.
Good evening and welcome. 261 Dutch police have seized a massive consignment of firearms.
Good evening and welcome. The headlines tonight. Dublin Airport is closed till tomorrow and flights are disrupted across Europe. No real let-up in the icy weather expected before St. Stephen's Day. President McAleese has signed into law the controversial banking bill. Snow blots out the Newgrange solstice, but lunar eclipse turns eyes skywards. There's further travel misery for thousands of passengers tonight.
Good evening and welcome to Monday's 6-1.
The headlines this evening. Inside emergency departments, our cameras captured the reality of what people endure waiting for a hospital bed.
The number of people on trolleys remains unacceptably high.
Sinn Féin suspends an MP over video he posted on the anniversary of the Kingsmill massacre.
His tweet was indefensible and that it has caused hurt and pain.
Garda probe into suspicious Limerick death. Martin Clancy was found inside his city flat.
And Irish success in Hollywood. Golden Globes for Martin McDonagh and Saoirse Ronan.
I just want to say how inspirational it's been to be in this room tonight.
There were 555 people, including elderly and children, on trolleys in emergency departments or on wards today. Thursday's 6-1. The headlines this evening. Gatwick grounded. Travel chaos after illegal drones force flight cancellations and leave thousands stranded.
We stranded 4 hours inside the plane without any information.
Not the best start to Christmas, anyhow.
Planning for a no-deal Brexit, a warning that avoiding a hard border could prove challenging.
If you don't have alignment on customs and regulations, then you get into real difficulties.
And concerns raised over safety at Irish courts following an incident at a Dublin courtroom. The Taoiseach has issued a stark warning that unless the UK maintains its existing customs and regulations...
Good evening and welcome to Thursday's 6-1.
The headlines this evening. Police in Newry investigate the deaths of 3 people following a grim discovery.
Well, all we know is 3 people are dead in tragic circumstances and the entire community is in utter shock.
Profoundly sorry, but the Northern Secretary still faces calls to quit over her comments on the Troubles.
After National Children's Hospital controversy, a senior civil servant promises no more guesstimates on capital projects.
And take-off at Aer Lingus. Mandatory makeup rules are scrapped for cabin crew.
Police in Northern Ireland are investigating the deaths of 3 people in Newry, County Down.